you yourself did not work on the range. What is your connection to this story?
So my mother worked for Whack-In Hut and hired the guards for the test site, went out there often. My father helped clear emergency and top secret stuff out at the test site when things would happen, and he would go out with his clearance and clear those. And my grandfather was chief of the security out there for 20 years.
Okay. Were all of them civilian, or were they with the Air Force?
My father and my grandfather were both military and then retired, and then also worked the job with the test site, so yeah.
And you said a couple things to me before we started rolling. I'm going to ask you to repeat. You feel that the range and what happened out there took your whole family?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you say that again for me?
Yeah. Yeah, that's my grandfather and my father passed away many years ago, and then my mother this year. So yeah, and they're all gone, and that's my entire family. So I don't have anybody left. Yeah,
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard.
Do they have any idea about the contamination that was out there?
I asked my mother one of her last few days in hospice, why did she document some things? Why did she say that she had some information? And she said, I always knew that I was exposed. So, yeah.
Did she hear anything officially from the government or from DOD?
No, not officially. But she was high enough up, she knew what she had been exposed to and what they were doing. So yeah, she knew.
What did she say?
She just said that I knew I was exposed, and I knew someday I might need to prove where I was at and what I had done and what I was exposed to in order to get treatment.
So she started collecting documents?
Yeah, she did collect some things, yeah. And got them all unclassified before she retired so that she could keep them, yeah.
And what did the documents show?
There's pictures of the test site, there's pictures of the control rooms and the range and what the entire map looks like, pictures of the vent holes and the main craters. Yeah.
Tell me, at what ages, what years did your grandfather and father pass away, and then your mother, and then what did they pass away of?
So my grandfather officially on record and my father officially on record were both heart disease. My grandfather passed in 87, my father in 94, and then my mother this year. My mother and my father both had interstitial lung disease and had been tested and documented that their lungs were infiltrated.
Infiltrated with what?
All of the stuff that they were exposed to, the plutonium and uranium, and yeah, so it was ruining the pockets of their lungs. So we believe that with my father, a clot broke free, and that's what ultimately killed him.
How old was he?
He was 56 years old, and my first son had just been born, his only grandchild, and had just been born, and he passed 3 months after he was born. Yeah.
How is losing him?
My father was my best friend. We talked daily. He called me sometimes several times a day, and he'd just, hey, I got a great joke for you, and he'd laugh and love you, and he'd hang up, and that was a standard thing for us. So it was a lot. It was a lot. And then I had to take care of my mother and get her they were just getting ready to retire and go and, travel the world, and we're excited. So yeah. So it was devastating.
And then tell me about finally bringing your mom here, and then what happened?
Yeah. So my mother lived in South Carolina. She had remarried. Her husband had just passed last year. And she was excited to come back to Vegas and be around her grandkids and my husband and I. We finally got her back here, and about a month after she got here, we had to submit her, put her into the hospital. They found tumors and said she was just, her entire body cavity was filled. Before she came, she wasn't feeling well, and so we got lots of tests done, the full gamut. I mean, they had done full PET scans, the full body. That was September 4th of 2022. She had no cancer that was showing, nothing was lit up. And by January 27th, we were in the hospital dealing with the fact that they said there's no hope, and just you need to make your peace and say your goodbyes. And yeah, so she was, her entire body cavity was filled, her stomach, her lungs, it was growing so rapidly. At one point I went, and about 5 days prior to her death, 6 days prior to her death, I found a nodule on her neck, and I asked them to scan it. It was about the size of my thumb. And the day that she died, they were going to give me the results, which was 6 days later, and it was the size of my fist. So this tumor had grown in 5 days that large.
The cancer just exploded in her body.
Everywhere. She had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She had already had a hysterectomy from cervical cancer and a mastectomy from breast cancer, and I mean, you just name it, it just kept coming. So that's why we had done all of the tests, because we thought, gosh, did something return? Why is she not feeling good? Why is she losing weight? Why can't she eat? So, and yeah.
At that point, how long did they say that she had?
Months maybe, but I said, so you say months, so is it really months? And he said, it's probably weeks. And we got a couple weeks with her. So yeah.
How hard was that?
Hard, really hard. I sat at her bedside every day, just holding her hand while her memory went, why she didn't remember where she was and why she was there, why she apologized, crying, I'm sorry I ever worked there. I know that that's what's killing me. So yeah, it was hard. It was hard, and she didn't want to go. She kept saying, I don't want to leave you. It was rough. Yeah.
Say for me one more time, what did she say specifically about where she worked?
So she, I know that her clearance took her all over the place, the test site. You know, things would, I mean, my household, everybody was, you know, top clearance. So there's lots of conversations where I would say, what were you talking about? And, you know, we don't talk about that. So, you know, I know that she was all over. I mean, because her guards were everywhere. They were somewhere at Area 51, and somewhere at the front gates, and somewhere in the control centers. So she was in lots of places, and I don't have like specifics to that. But
what did she specifically say to you when you were at her bedside when she was apologizing? What did she say?
She said, I'm so sorry, because I know that this is what my demise is, and I don't want to leave now. So, and I asked her, I said, Mom, why did you save some documents? And she said, because I always knew I was exposed. So yeah.
Were there any sort of protective measures in place? I mean, she suspected she might be exposed. What was the protection?
Well, she would go out in her own clothes and come home in her own clothes. So, you know, she didn't have uniforms and anything like that. And that all went into the laundry basket, which I did the laundry. And now we're finding that, you know, it was passed on, so, which we had no clue. But it just, over and over, you know, I don't know that she realized the depth of what she was exposed to until later, as people started to get sick. And she worked out there for 30 years. So my grandfather for 20 and my dad for about 10, on and off, depending, you know, little jobs. So they would have something, there was something top secret that would happen. He would have the expertise, they would pull him out there.
I'm trying to imagine what it was like growing up in this home,
Yeah.
a home full of people with top clearance.
Right.
Tell me what it was like.
Often it was the conversation of, we don't talk about that. So, when I was a little kid and I would hear stuff and I'd say, gosh, well, like how everybody's talking about this and this spaceship and this whatever, oh yeah, we don't talk about that. So it was just, I learned very quickly not to ask questions when that was the conversation. So yeah, it was interesting. And what days, I did all the cooking and cleaning in our house because my mother worked full time and then also was getting her master's degree at the same time, and then traveling to the test site on and off. And so younger, she rode the bus, so she didn't get home till late. And other nights, as she made more money and worked her way up and could afford to, she drove so that she could get home earlier in time for dinner. So.
Did you have the sense growing up that your family was engaged in important work?
Yes, yeah, always. My mother was honored as one of the Nevada's Women of Who's Who of Nevada for some of the work that she did. My grandfather as well, very well known. So yeah, I knew they did important work.
Did you ever ask them about aliens, and what did they say?
I did, many times. Kids at school are talking. Yeah, my grandfather would always say, we don't talk about any of that.
So he didn't say no.
Right.
He just said that we don't talk about
that, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so then the next question was, well, did you see them? We don't talk about that. Always, we don't talk about that. And then it just, the conversation has to end. So that's where we land. So yeah.
Did you ever find out from them what they saw?
No. They upheld their position and always, we don't talk about it. Yeah. So yeah. And now I wish I could ask, right?
Do you suspect?
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now you and other families did not actually live on the range. Explain how contamination came home.
So my mother would wear her own clothes out there. My father would wear his own shoes out there. My grandfather wore his uniform and his own shoes. And then when they would come home, obviously, the shoes would come into the household and the clothes would go into the laundry. And so it landed wherever it landed. I mean, the particles are so small. I'm now understanding that it was probably laden in the carpet and in the bedding and wherever they sat on the couch and all of those good things. I mean, my mother dressed very professionally, and when she came home, it wasn't like, take the clothes off immediately and go into the laundry. So lots of them had to go to the dry cleaner, so they would hang in the room until they would go to the dry cleaner. So it was, who knows what was harbored in the house that we ultimately bought from my parents after my dad died.
You still live in that home?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think they had any idea they were tracking contamination home?
No idea, I'm sure. They would have never put us through that. So yeah.
When your father deteriorated so rapidly, did he have any idea what was going on?
None. He, actually, my dad also was a race car driver here in Vegas, and he had just had a checkup for his annual driver's permit, and they said, your heart's like a baby. You do have the interstitial lung disease. We had just gone through all of that testing. They said it's pretty severe, but as long as you're healthy and you're not smoking and you're not exposing yourself to other things, you should be able to live a full life. So at that point, I don't think that they still were acknowledging how bad it was. So yeah.
What did he make of the interstitial lung disease? Was he a smoker? Does he have any history of anything?
Yeah, he did smoke earlier, but what the lung disease showed was that it was not from smoking. So it was actually contaminants that had infiltrated his lungs. And I want to say, it's old records, but I want to say it's somewhere in the 80% range of his lungs were filled. Did
you have any conversations with him about where did this come from? Was this from your work?
No, because part of the interstitial lung disease, I do know that they sent him for the testing to see what he had. And after that, we did have some conversations about, it was from work, from his military service, from his exposure out there, and possibly on one of the Navy ships. But it was a very surreal conversation as far as, okay, this is what this could mean, but I'm healthy. They said I'm healthy. They said I'm good. So we've got a long time. And he didn't know. I mean, it was rapid for him. I was there. I was showing him pictures, brought over the baby. He was so excited. And then half an hour later, he was gone. So yeah, I just happened to be able to see him the day that he passed.
You didn't know to say goodbye, though.
No, I had no clue to say goodbye. Yeah. It's probably the hardest part, When my mother was sick, I said, I don't know which is worse, the not knowing and never being able to say the goodbyes, or the long goodbye that feels like I can't even begin to do the things that she never felt like she ever got to do, or the wish list of the, what's on her bucket list, not be able to do those because she was so sick and just laid in a bed for the last couple of weeks. So yeah.
To what extent would you say that your life has been impacted by this range and by choice?
Everything. Yeah. Everything. I mean, my entire life. Now I'm worried about my health and my kids' health, and they have, some underlying stuff that we're starting to go, oh gosh, this all comes together, all the way down to, I look back and every single dog we've ever had in that household has had massive tumors and problems. And like, how far does it go? Who knows? How far does it go? How much do I have laying ahead of me is really daunting, because I don't want to do the same to my kids.
You're not worried for your own suffering or for your prognosis. You're worried about the impact that you're going to have on them.
Yeah. I don't want to leave them behind the same way and have them have to watch me go through it. So yeah, it's hard.
What worries you about the future?
What really truly is out there? What really have I been exposed to? What are the consequences that I'm, going to have to deal with? And what does health insurance cover? There's a lot of extras. Sure. There's a lot of extras.
What health impacts do you already have?
I have some lung issues. I have a wheezing that I've had since I was a late teenager. I was a big athlete, so I'm not, like everybody says, oh no, you're an athlete, you have good lungs, you're good, but I don't know what that wheezing is. I mean, we've done TB tests and all kinds of lung, exposure and tests for that. I have started to show some serious signs of thyroid issues, and the same path my mom started on, which is really concerning to me. How do I have the same issue? So on top of it, it's not genetic. We know that. So.
And how do we know that?
Because I'm adopted. So yeah, both my parents adopted me out of Las Vegas. I was actually born and raised here. So yeah, they adopted me. So I know it's not genetic. So how do I have the same issues? That really became the big question at the beginning. So. Yeah.
And what about your children?
One of my sons has some lung issues, has some colon issues, intestinal issues, a weird cough as well. My other son, major migraines, doesn't sleep well a lot of hypertension, some things that go with that as well. So
I have to ask, why stay in the house?
We've gutted the house. We started all over. Prior to understanding, I would have abated it had I known. On the other hand, I look at it and go, gosh, this is where I was born and raised. Like, we have our handprints of all of us in my backyard, and it's a piece of my parents that's left. And do I really want somebody else to move in there and go through the same thing. I don't know, I mean, I feel like we've torn it all out and it's all new. Everything's new all the way down to the studs, but who knows? So, yeah.
How many years did your mom, grandpa, and dad work out there on the range?
So my grandfather was 20 years. My father was about 10 years between the different, not full time. It was different callings. And then my mother was 30 plus years.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you think about it all? What is the feeling?
It's incomprehensible. It's maddening on some sides. How do you know that this is what you're doing to people, and the fact that it can be passed down, the fact that it can, genetically I can pass this on now to my kids, and it looks like I may have. My husband lived with us for a year before we got married and bought our own house. And then 3 years later, my dad was passed, so then we moved back into that same house. He's had some lipomas and some issues as well. So again, not genetic, but exposure. So it's infuriating that the government understands. They know it's top secret. They know what's happened. They know what they've exposed people to, and the fact that you allow people to just go on about life. How do you just go on about life?
You're angry.
My life's different. Yeah, my life is different because of it. How do you just go on? I don't know. Of course, I move forward. I have kids, but how do you allow families to do that? How do you do that to somebody and know that that's what's happening? And for so many, the military to not pay, the DOD workers to not even cover any of it is just, it's maddening.
This is so much.
I know.
I mean, you say your life is different. I think that's such an understatement.
Oh, yeah.
A bomb went off in your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The minute my dad found out that I was having kids, and especially that it was a boy, he was so excited. He was already getting parts to build a mini race go-kart for my son, and was so excited. And we say it all the time, like, our life would be so different. It would just be so different. My parents were still here. My grandfather was, I mean, he would be much older now, so I'm sure we would have lost him, but not, to a cruel in and out of the hospital and surgeries. And yeah, life would be so different. To have parents, it would be different. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah.
What has this taken from you?
A whole lot of energy, a lot of emotion, a lot of sadness. It's taken a lot. It's taken, my opportunities. My kids don't even know my father. They never got to meet him. My best friend, they never got to really know him. My son was 3 months old. My other son wasn't born until years later. So yeah, it's taken a whole lot. A lot of my dreams as a kid, a lot of my ideas to do, what we were going to do in our future, and it's taken a lot.
Dave says he has a document that shows in 1975, 4 years before the structure and where he served was built, that there was an environmental impact report, and they recognized that there was contamination, and there was a crossroad. There was 3 options. 1, to shut it down. 2, to take massive protective measures, or 3, business as usual, and that's what they chose. What would you say if given the opportunity to the person who made that call?
Well, we're still doing business as usual, which is the reason it's so frustrating, and we're here today, right? And they, I wonder where their impact became. What were they impacted by it? Would they have put their family out there? Because to me, that's my first thought. Would I do that to my own children? And if I wouldn't, then why would you do it to anybody else's? So I live with the hope that they did it unconsciously and didn't realize what they did to people. But now so now do something about it. Yeah. I don't, did they work out there? Did they expose themselves and their families? My guess is no. My guess is they came and looked at the numbers on a piece of paper and said, we can mitigate that risk. And kept moving on.
Do you feel that people were sacrificed?
Oh yes, absolutely. My whole family was sacrificed. Yeah. And they're just, a tiny piece of it. Thousands of people. The entire Las Vegas Valley and everything surrounding. Yeah.
What would make things right now? What needs to happen?
There's no way to make it right. There's no way that you couldn't give me back my family. You can't give these people back their health. You can't give me back the not worrying. You can't make it right. You can't make it up. You can make it right by allowing the coverage. Allow the people that were, harmed by this to get the care that they need. It is still hard for me to get insurance to cover for me, to say this is what's going on, and then they want to, well, we don't really need that test. We need to do this one first. Well, we don't need it with contrast. We need it without contrast. And then it comes back and, oh, we really do need it with contrast because now we can't tell. And it's just over and over and over. So at some point, there was an exposure that they know, and they know what it did to people. Like, just own up to it and say, these are the things that we need to test for. These are the things that could be coming. These are the things that we can do for you. And then help to pay for it. Money doesn't fix it, but at least it gives you the freedom to be able to go get the help that you need without having to go fight for it. I shouldn't have to fight for my own health, the health of my kids. Yeah.
What do you think of the fact that a lot of these veterans who were exposed to ionizing radiation are coming forward, they're applying to the VA, they're trying to get coverage and benefits, and they're learning that their data masked, that literally the DOD is refusing to acknowledge that they were even there?
Yes, they're redacted. And I would guess that that's the same road that it would have been for my family as well, had they filed why they were still alive. And it is, again, just maddening. Like, they were there. They have badges, they have IDs that they have, retirement. They know where they were. They know where all these people were located. They had to wear a special badge to walk through certain areas. You knew they were there. How do you not cover that? It's mind-boggling that you can take a blackout and just go, nope, not there. Nope, they weren't exposed. No, that doesn't make it go away. It makes the suffering worse. That's compounding the issue instead of helping.
Is it almost like gaslighting thousands of people?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Telling them they weren't there, they weren't exposed, they weren't acknowledged. I mean, how can you not acknowledge somebody that gave their health to this country and the work that was being done?
Is it sickening?
It is. So sickening. Mm-hmm. And so much time and effort and sadness that really doesn't have to affect people's lives, but it is. And then as they continue to cover up and not want to talk about it and sweep it under the rug, it'll be okay. It's not okay at all.
We wanted to talk to you to understand that it isn't just this primary exposure, this group of veterans and workers who are out there. There are ripple effects to this. How many families do you feel there are out there like you, like yours?
Since I started working with Dave and talking to him to get the understanding, I didn't understand what was going on with me. I didn't understand what was going on with my mother and the depth of all of that. And understanding is, I started to talk to friends that have lived here all their life. Hey, you have lung issues. What are they? What does the doctor say? You really should mention this part of it and see if that can help you. It's mind-blowing how many of my friends, how many of their families, I mean, just the other day my girlfriend said, oh my gosh, I didn't even know my father drove the trucks with the supplies out there. Another girlfriend of mine, oh my gosh, maybe that's why my daughter had cancer when she was born. holy cow, like why we have to do all these blood transfusions and bone marrow transplants, and oh gosh, because we were exposed when the wind shifted. And it is absolutely insane to understand the depth. And that's just a few conversations.
Yeah. One of the vets we were speaking to last night, it really struck me. He said, we're just the ones who are well enough and have enough energy to speak with you. The memorial list is growing every single day. And he said, and so many of them died having no idea what killed them, having no idea what happened. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I'm sure that was my father's case, and probably my grandfather's case. My mother, so many people had gotten sick. She lost one of her best friend's husbands and several of her workers and several people that she was really close to. So I think by the time we got to my mother's situation, it had been so long that so many people were sick that she knew. But I think there's lots of people that have no clue. I mean, as I'm talking to friends, I'm finding out they had no clue. I didn't know the depth of it. Yeah.
What do you want every American to know about what happened out there?
Gosh, we're people just like everybody else. We want the same thing everybody wants, to be safe, to be healthy, and to be loved. We want the same opportunities everybody else wants. And we deserve it. And all of the workers out there and all of the military deserve that treatment. And I think that people need to understand that the work needed to be done. It could have been done in a more safe way. I don't know, how do we make that make sense? But I think that lots of people don't know. And so, if you live in a different part of the country and you don't know, you didn't grow up, duck and cover, under the desks while they were doing the testing. Close the windows, don't go outside today in the playground. Nobody else experienced that at that level, so they just don't know. But we're humans. We want the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.